On the hunt for comfortable, timeless Western boots? You already know the best place to shop for quality boots is at your local Tacova store. So stop by Tacova's Nashville, at the Mall at Green Hills, or on Broadway by Ryman Auditorium. That's right, you now have 2 locations to choose from. Grab a cold one as you shop and get fitted by a pro. Tacova's Nashville is at your service, and you can find your perfectly fitted dream boots with the help of their expert staff. Everyone will be asking where you got your sick new boots, but I won't be asking because I know they must be Tacovas. That's TECOVAS.com. Don't go gently, y'all. Today on CityCast Nashville, we've got the local legends behind Nashville Severe Weather. They provide probably the most essential service in town with hyper-local weather updates via social media and their website every day. If you've been in town for a minute, you've probably watched one of their YouTube live streams during a tornado warning, and you know what a relief it is to read their "you can go to bed now" tweet after a big storm. They've literally saved lives. But if you aren't one of the 300,000 Nashvillians that already follow them on Twitter, you probably should go ahead and do that, especially if you're new to the types of severe weather that we get here. While tornado season seems to be year-round these days, summer also brings risks of flash flooding, and we want you to be prepared for it all. CityCast Nashville is presented by our exclusive launch sponsor, Tacovas. It's June 13th, 2024. I'm Grace Fuse, and this is what Nashville's talking about. We are here with Andrew, Will, and David from Nashville Severe Weather, which is definitely my and a lot of Nashville's go-to for weather updates. And I feel a very strong parasocial relationship with you guys just because I've spent a lot of time listening to you, specifically while hiding underneath a mattress. Just a quick roll call. Would each of you just say your names so that we can calibrate the listeners to who they're listening to?
Sure. I'm Andrew Leeper.
My name is Will Minkoff.
And I'm David Dropney.
Okay, so just first things first, can you tell us how Nashville Severe Weather started?
Yeah, so our story kind of started with David and I doing the weather in Nashville kind of on parallel tracks, focusing on 2 different aspects. So about 12 years or so ago, David got access to a software tool we still use today called Gibson Ridge, or GR. It put radar interpretation software into the hands of the everyman, so to speak. I was taking amateur radio reports of severe weather impacts from the National Weather Service Skywarn program and putting severe weather report information on Twitter. And David and I found each other on Twitter, had lunch. He told me what he was trying to do. I told him what I was trying to do, and we left as partners that day. Fast forward about 5 years later, and Andrew came to our team to add a much needed level of professionalism, a video component to what we do, as well as just another pair of eyes and another pair of hands.
I don't know about you guys, but I hate weather. Do you hate weather? Do you have a resentment for it?
Yeah, I mean, I do. You know, it's all fun and games until somebody gets hurt. And a lot of the weather community grew up fascinated or traumatized by weather. The group that's fascinated by it gets traumatized, and then kind of their motivation switches. That's certainly true for me. We all have our own stories that we could tell. You know, for Will, it was the 98 tornado. For me, it was a trauma in Ohio, and then post-Katrina down on the Mississippi coast. And then more recently, of course, everybody, I think, probably listening to this is in some way traumatized by the March 3rd, 2020 tornado. And then there was a derecho the next month or 2 months later. And then, you know, we had Waverly floods. Like, we've really taken it on the chin. We've had some more storm fatalities last December from tornado. I mean, you don't think of tornado month as December, but it's true. You know, all tornadoes are bad. All storms are bad because it's not about the storm and it's not about what's on the radar. It's about the people and the property that are beneath that radar image.
I think, you know, for me, I believe there's a relationship between the fascination and the fear and the hate. For me, I'm fascinated with the weather. I mean, I was just on an airplane yesterday and I was glued to that window because I wanted to see the weather from up close in that airplane. I also have a very healthy respect and a fear of it. And as David says, I have a hate for it too. But that fascination for me has been channeled over the past several years into wanting to find ways to better communicate risks, to try to keep people safe from something that fascinates us. And for me, that's the goal.
I hate weather. It keeps me up late. It hurts people. It hurts my friends. It often gets ignored and underestimated. It causes billions of dollars of damage around the country every year. I'm with Andrew, right? Like this is something that we can do to help people understand weather and other natural hazards in their community.
So, what kind of severe weather emergencies do we need to watch out for during the summer?
Certainly in the summertime, we get a lot of pop-up downpours. We call them frog stranglers, colloquially, on our platform. Rain that rises so fast, even the frogs can't get above it, right? So flooding is a huge concern in Davidson County. Also in Williamson County, if you live near a creek or a stream and there's a thunderstorm and some summer afternoon, it can cause that creek or stream to rise really quickly, can inundate roads that you may use to get to and from work or school or a loved one's house, and cause a particularly dangerous situation.
And what can people do to prepare for flash flooding since sometimes it comes out of nowhere?
Yeah. So what we typically find in a flash flooding situation, the effects typically come in two major ways. One of those is vehicles. So it's your sort of your urban flooding, the city streets, the roads, the interstates that will flood for just a little bit. But the water's high enough and it moves fast enough where the cars and vehicles that you drive through that water don't make it across or are affected in one way or another by that water. And that can be very dangerous. We see a lot of situations, whether it's here or other places, where fatalities occur crossing that water in an automobile. And that's not a good thing. So that's a major place where we would love to bring everybody on board with sort of preparing. Say, hey, if you get heavy rain, be especially cautious of that water, especially that moving water across our local roads. Another way, of course, is with our houses. And, I feel like we do a pretty good job around here with not building down in the, right next to a giant, well-known floodplain. But you get your really big events like we had around here in 2010, and you can see, houses being affected by flooding. But I think far and away, the biggest thing that we need to watch out for is that flash flooding, the quick flooding that can surprise us in places that don't normally flood. But, you get your really big events like we had around here in 2010, and you can see, houses being affected by flooding. But I think far and away, the biggest thing that we need to watch out for is that flash flooding, the quick flooding that can surprise us in places that don't normally flood.
Nashville has a lot of newcomers who, like me, aren't familiar with tornado life. What kind of advice would you give them on how to be prepared, but also what to do when a severe weather event is happening?
That's a great question. So the first thing to do, and it may seem super easy, but especially if you're new to our area, know where you are on a map. The reason that this is important is because the National Weather Service a long time ago standardized the way they issue warnings, and they do that using what's called a polygon-based warning system. So a polygon is just a shape that's drawn on a map, and they say some hazard will occur inside of this shape, probably. And if you know whether or not you're inside that polygon or outside of that polygon, you can then take appropriate action. If it's a tornado warning, you can shelter in the lowest level, most interior room. If it's flash flood warning, get to higher ground. If it's a high wind warning, bring in your trash cans, etc.
I'm glad you addressed the scary polygon because that's something that I always think about. With the scary polygon, it's not guaranteed that you're going to get hit by something if you're inside of that, right?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And those polygons are designed to try to not overwarn a storm, because we know, and the weather community knows, that there's a problem that occurs when you overwarn and you warn too many people that a storm is coming. So that polygon really was designed to try to shrink that area down. And so that's why it's important to know where you are. So if you're in Inglewood, know that you are in Inglewood. And so when you look down on that map where the polygon is, you see Inglewood there, you know whether you're in or out of that polygon. So yeah, what Will said is exactly right. I mean, know exactly where you are on that map. If you're in a different part of town shopping or whatever, just know where you are there so that you can know whether you're inside that warning or not.
And there's some really easy personal preparedness things that people can do. So you can have a plan. We used to talk all the time about you had kids and you were in your house, what to do when the smoke alarms went off, right? You'd run outside and meet up at the treehouse in the backyard or whatever the case may be. If you've got a family or a group of roommates, or even if you live alone, know what you're going to do in the event that you've been placed in one of those warnings. Do you have a kit with some essential supplies in it? A pair of gloves, a flashlight, a phone charger. You have multiple ways to get woken up in the middle of the night with a NOAA weather radio or an app like Stormwatch Plus, the one we endorse, that'll wake you up in the middle of the night. Focus on who's going to be responsible for what, right? And ahead of a severe weather event, thankfully we almost always have, notice and information ahead of time, advance enough to prepare a day ahead of time. Hey, there might be severe weather tomorrow, then I'm going to go ahead and get my safe place ready, make sure I have my kit, review our plan, etc. So there are things that you can do at home just to be a little bit more prepared.
Yeah, I would say you should also probably have batteries in there for your flashlight, some spare batteries, because I know recently we had some strong winds and I lost power and realized that all 5 of my flashlights were dead. So knocked myself on a couple table corners trying to find my single candle. So also the 2020 tornado was my first tornado experience, period. And then I lived on a second floor of an apartment with no access to an internal room that really had no windows and no access to a basement or anything like that. How should people deal with it if they don't have an ideal safe space?
I'm glad you brought this up because it gives us an opportunity to mention a program that we're really fond of. Heather Mathis is a local meteorologist here in Nashville, and she partnered with emergency management officials to put together a database of what are called safe places where you can go and shelter in the event of a tornado warning or a flash flood warning or a winter storm warning, whatever the case may be. You can go to the safe places website just by googling safe places TN and find out where that registry is. So that's something that can really help if you're unsure the place you live is going to be accommodating if you have to shelter. This is especially true for people that live in mobile or manufactured homes. We see all the time mobile and manufactured homes that are hit, and just by the nature of the way they are fastened to the ground, don't stand up to straight line winds that are above severe criteria or rotating severe winds like in a tornado. And so that Safe Places program is something that could really help somebody that's in that situation.
Yeah, that's a great resource. That's really cool to hear about. For people's safe spaces at home, what kind of stuff should they have there besides a 6-pack of beer?
Yeah, so everybody's use case is a little bit different, right? I'm a father of 3 kids. So for me, it's going to be something that is going to be able to not only keep them protected, bike helmets, pillows, blankets, stuff for them to get comfortable, stuff for them to stay entertained. So whether it's a Game Boy, a coloring book, bracelet loom, whatever the case may be, right? Because you might need to be sheltered there for 30, 45 minutes, maybe even an hour in a tornado warning. I also want to make sure that inside that safe place, and this goes for pretty much everybody, a way to get information. So if that's a NOAA weather radio, you can even go on Amazon or to your local hardware store and get one that's a flashlight, a weather radio, and a phone charger all in one if you want to feel like you are super prepared for the end of the world. So a way to make sure that you can continue to get information is going to be really helpful. And then just some mediocre supplies if you have to be in there longer than you anticipated, or if you're going to be emerging from that place in the dark and maybe a wall did fall down somewhere, or maybe a tree did crash through the next room over. So I always like telling people to make sure that they've got shoes on and that inside their go kit, they've got a pair of gloves, a bottle of water, and a flashlight.
So, you guys have started a Patreon. David, can you tell us why you started it?
Yeah, so Will and I, when we started, we were funding this on our own, and we reached the point where our ability to fund the things that we needed to do on the project was we were hitting a breaking point. We were growing really, really fast, and there were things that we needed to buy that, frankly, the family couldn't afford on top of the other stuff that we were spending money on. And then right around that time, we were pivoting to our YouTube Live channel, which at the time and even today, I think is the most effective way for us to communicate with people. That required a lot more computing power. It required a lot more equipment. It required a lot more monthly things that we had to pay for, subscriptions, data, et cetera. Around that time as well, we were getting people coming to us wanting to put ads on our site, wanting to, in one case, paywall what we were doing. We had medium and large media companies approach us, even this year, asking to either purchase our content or host our stuff. And we've always resisted that because we didn't want to serve the advertiser. We always wanted to serve the audience. If this thing was going to continue to grow, though, we needed some income. So we opened up a Patreon, and people have been very generous. What we really need are monthly donations because our bills are monthly. And that allows us to do not only pay for what we're doing without having to, take money out of the kids' college fund or anything ridiculous like that, but more importantly, to do other things that we see that the community needs that nobody else is going to fund. So we've launched those projects, and those have been successful over time. So the Patreon is really kind of the economic lifeblood of what we do. The idea being we don't want you to have to see an ad before you see where the storm is going. And then more importantly, when people give to us, it keeps it free for everyone. So the people who often are most likely to suffer from a severe weather event are usually those less able to give. So your donation keeps this free for everyone, and that's really at the heart of our mission, is to make sure that money it doesn't get in between us.
Absolutely. So in a severe weather emergency, you guys go live on YouTube. But what happens if the severe weather is headed directly for one of your houses?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up. That has happened.
It has.
To us. Andrew has a story about this.
Yeah, so, one thing that we always have to keep in mind is that we're located in Williamson County, all three of us. And so we're all in different parts of the county. Well, the odds are that one of us is going to be affected by the severe weather that we're covering. And so, so one night I was watching radar and then realized that, this thing that we were covering on YouTube was headed right for our house where we live. And so our family was asleep. I don't know, it was like 1, 2, 3 in the morning. Which is one of those things. We tend to get a lot of nighttime storms here. And I had to go wake them up. And it looked like it could spin up. And we were talking about, hey, this storm has a possibility of rotating faster, getting stronger. And that was headed right for where we live. So, yeah, I went and woke my wife up and said, hey, you need to be aware of this and need to be ready to get the kids up. What I noticed when I came back to the YouTube Live, and I think the other guys there covered while I was out for just a second, I think a lot of people really... that was when they started to get concerned because they realized that all of a sudden we were taking it seriously ourselves for our families.
Yeah, no, that's a spooky thing to see while you're watching the YouTube Live, while you're hiding under your mattress with your helmet on, to see it directly affect one of you guys. Just for people to have this information, how do people find you if they're not familiar?
Well, the easiest way to find us is to go to our website, NashvilleSevereWeather.com. From there, you'll get a live look into the daily forecast products that our team produces. Generally speaking, it's not one of the three of us. There are more folks working behind the scenes to keep this up and running, including our faithful intern, Elon, who cranks out our long form blog products every day. We also have a really big presence on Twitter, or X as it's called now. So you can search up NashSevereWx on Twitter as well as on Instagram and get access to the most up-to-date information. And generally how it works is we'll post long-form content on the website. We'll do, real-time coverage on social media channels. And then once we get a warning for either Davidson or Williamson County for a severe thunderstorm or a tornado warning, that's when we usually fire up cameras and go live on YouTube.
So for our listeners who are outside of Davidson and Williamson counties, where can they go for their local info?
So we have, as part of a network that is called the T-Spotter Network. There are other severe weather accounts in other counties, in Rutherford and Wilson, Sumner, Dixon, Hickman, and many other counties, even over in the other up on the plateau. So there are other accounts out there, and the reason for that, we aim to be hyper local.
Nice, just like CityCast. So in 2020, I was working at Asphalt Beach Skate Shop in 5 Points, which got totally destroyed. And it was crazy to see what these storms can do firsthand. I still think it's hard for people who maybe just moved here to understand that, though, and we get all these warnings from the weather apps on our phones, and then when nothing happens directly to us, it kind of feels like meteorologists are crying wolf, which means people stop paying attention, and it kind of dilutes the seriousness.
Maybe that's a good topic for perhaps a part 2, what to take seriously and what to not take seriously when consuming weather media.
You need to mute me right now because I'm about to go off. So,
And on that note, we also need to have you guys back because David started to talk about the way that different communities in Nashville are affected by severe weather. And we really want to dig into that, but we don't have time this time. So we'd love to have you guys back on soon to talk about that. And we thank you so much for your time. We're really excited to have you on. You guys are so important to Nashville. And again, I feel very attached to you all. So it was great having you on.
Thank you, Grace.
Thanks, Grace.
hey, congrats on the podcast. We're looking forward to doing this again.
That's all for today here on CityCast Nashville. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend? Rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Nashville newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye-bye.